All right, folks. As promised, we are live.
Going live.
Going live. We are live right now, guys. Y'all let me know if y'all can hear me.
I'll be at the homestead in about 3 minutes.
That's fine. You just run in and do what you got to do, guys. You go, Matthew. Y'all notice Matthew over here? He's driving. He had to pick up a boat part. I guess he's rough on his boat there.
Nah, just a little bit. It's these darn trolling motors. It's all this advancement in crappie fishing.
Hey, that's good stuff. Hey, that's a good thing about this live stuff, Matthew. It's real fishing, and you're showing parts of it right now, man. You know, you got to go pick up some parts for your trolling motor, and you know.
Oh yeah, I'm gonna be working on it all night, get it ready. I'm gonna be leaving probably pretty quick to go to Grenada. I might run down there tomorrow because a couple of my buddies are there from Louisiana. They're not gonna end up fishing the tournament. They're just up to fun fish on there, and I ain't got to see them at all this year. So that's kind of the funnest part of it, you know, is really getting around everybody. You know, I'm meeting John down there at the Alabama River. Been 2 years ago now, probably.
Yeah.
2 years ago.
Yeah. My little man was scared of Matthew.
I was just going to say this is a good story. So this guy comes walking up, and he had just been up by Josh Jones, and I think Jones even held your little boy, and y'all took a picture.
Yeah.
And then you kind of go ahead.
Yeah, it was funny. So like, he's like, you know, if I was a kid, I think Josh Jones would look a little more spookier than Matt does.
That's funny.
So like, I said, "What? This is Matthew Rogers. My little boy's name's Creek." And I said, "You want to meet Mr. Matt and take a picture of Matt?" He's like, "Oh no." He went to hide behind me.
That's cool, Matthew. That's cool. Hey man, let's talk about it. Let's see your recent win. You were at Lake D'Arbonne. That was just 2 weeks ago.
Man, hey. There you come back. You're really distorted. Am I distorted?
You're good.
I said your latest. You just won a Lake D'Arbonne at Crappie Masters. We lost him, didn't we?
He might be going through a little bad area until he gets to his house, Shane.
Yeah, Matt's picking up boat parts, guys. This part of fishing. He's picking up some trolling motor parts. He's supposed to be headed. There he is. Maybe we can add him back. There he is.
Yeah, you started cutting out and distorting it.
That's fine.
I don't know what was going on.
That's Matthew Rogers, guys. We got about 50 people here. If you don't know who he is, I'm sure everybody in the world knows who he is. He's one of the best in the country right now. You and your dad just won at Lake D'Arbonne. What? 2 weeks ago?
You're super distorted. Hey, give me 1 minute. Can you hear me?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah.
In the house. We'll cover you till you get in the house.
It's like cutting out real bad. I'll be right back in it.
All right,
okay.
Go ahead. He'll be right, guys. He's picking up some parts for his boat, man. He's got to go to Grenada, get ready for the tournament this weekend. He's going in his house. He'll be right back on here. While we're waiting on him, I'll make a commercial for our sponsor here. CT Ward Power Sports right there in Camden, Alabama. Taylor and Jessica Ward. Big Daddy sent me a picture here. They've got Excel Bay Pros. You can see them center consoles, Excel Bay Pros. They also got Stalker, the side console and a center console. They got Hurricane deck boats and Godfrey pontoons. They sell side-by-sides and UTVs. You can also see them in the picture there, guys. CT Ward Power Sports is one of the sponsors for the show, and I thank them a lot, man. It's helping us do it. Thank you, guys, and we'll advertise them again before the show's over with. But thank you, Taylor and Jessica Ward. Matthew's trying to come back now. You back, Matthew?
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
I can kind of hear you. I'm like literally a block from my house. I can sign in on my computer, my PC.
Do that.
And
Just go off and come back. Everybody will stay on here.
Yeah.
We'll take some questions.
That's what I'll do.
A bunch of comments. Just come back, and I'll add you back to the podcast. Just go do what you got to do.
Yeah.
All right. Hey, guys.
It'll take me like a minute and a half. So I'll be right here real quick.
Good
Don't
deal.
go anywhere.
All right. We won't. Hey, while Matthew's getting hooked up at his house, y'all go ahead and load those questions up.
Yeah, I got the comments right now, guys. Let's see what we got here. While we're waiting on Matthew to get it going, everybody can hear me? That's good. Let's see what we got. There's Matt Harris. Everybody's just saying, hey. There's Mark Boland. Appreciate y'all doing these lives. He's a newcomer. This guy right here, this is what we do it for, guys. He said, I appreciate y'all doing these lives. I'm a newcomer and learning, watching y'all show as well as Crappie Connection. Good deal, man. That's what we do this for. John and I discussed this a month ago, and a month and a half ago, we figured we were going to start doing this and sharing some information. And John likes to talk about crappie fishing like I do. So, but I'm looking for some questions here. Jamie Hodge said he said to Clark Hill, he's going to go up there with them big fish are, John.
Oh, good deal. Man, after seeing that bag they had there.
Yeah. We're
sure
waiting on
Matt. Go to Clark's Hill.
Yeah, we're waiting on Matt to get back. He was picking up some trailer motor parts, guys, so he should be back on the podcast here in just a minute. See if y'all got some questions. Y'all come on with some questions here while we're waiting on Matt. We got 63 people. I appreciate y'all.
Yeah, I got a little tip for people. All these trolling motors got control boards in them, and if you're gonna go all over fishing, don't let your whole trip get run when you could, if you can't afford to, get you an extra one of those control boards and vacuum seal it and keep it in your boat, and do you a YouTube video, learn how to swap that thing out. It doesn't take very long, but that control board goes out on the oil tracks or whatever you got. You're gonna be down for the rest of your trip. So if you can get you an extra control board to keep in your boat, it's a good thing to have. I've let people borrow my extra one, at a tournament before when theirs went out.
Yeah, John's giving a good tip about those boards. Matter of fact, my Garmin Force, I had to get a new power board for it. I'm trying to add him to the podcast. For some reason, it's staying black. I don't know why. It's gonna be something all the time when you do these lives, man. I don't know what it is. Let's see, Mark Boland. We're trying to add Matthew back on here. He said he'd been using sniper braid and had pretty good luck with it. What brand braid do y'all like for pitching jigs? What braid do you like there, John?
I like the canine braid a lot. When I'm casting, Shane, you know this, braid is what I'm casting with. When I'm using a longer pole, I don't like to use a braid because I personally have a problem. It starts getting wrapped at the end.
Me too, buddy.
So I use a heavier fluorocarbon on the longer pole. But I mean, I know Patrick Stone, he uses like I want to say it's a 35, 40-pound braid on his longer poles.
He does. Yeah, he uses some heavy braid. I've seen it, but I have trouble with it wrap around the tip too, John. Like I said, I'm using some 14 fluorocarbon on 14 or 15 on mine. But Mark Boland, I use what is that? I use some Casking braid. Everybody makes good braid, but you want to make sure that braid don't have a lot of memory if you use it. John turned me on to some 6-pound braid too. I don't even know what kind it was. It was good stuff. But K9, that 5-pound K9, it does pretty good.
Yeah, you got to be careful with it. It'll cut you.
I've got scars all over my fingers, guys. But we're trying to add Matthew, guys. We're going to keep going until he can get his stuff straight. This is what happens when you go live. Hey, that's why we do it for, though. It's just, hey, you overcome all kinds of stuff like this. Y'all come on with some questions. Y'all want some information. I know. I'm digging through here and making sure we hadn't missed anybody.
Shane, I don't know if we've done one yet or we didn't have a little bit of complication.
Oh, yeah. The first time I done it, you're exactly right, man. I appreciate we got 72 people on here listening. That's awesome. John, there's Matthew. He's trying to come back now, I think. Hopefully we can get him on here. Let's see if we can get him on here this time. There you go.
There we go.
There he is.
In the shop. I got out here and I thought my laptop was out here, and then I had to run in the house. I've been running all over.
Hey, you're good, buddy. Hey.
I'm wore out.
You got 71 people waiting on you. You've been running around like a chicken trying to get on this thing.
And then I got all this crap from tying jigs out here in the way. I thought my phone would work. It was working fine there. And then I don't know if it was the storms coming through or what.
Show them colors again. Are those jigs you were tying?
I tied a bunch up. I don't have any that I've actually tied right here. I've got them all in my boxes.
Yeah, okay. You tying a lot of jigs, Matthew? Is that what you're using a lot? Your hand ties?
Yeah, I do a lot of my hand ties. man, like there's some people that make some good ones, but like it's just easier to just do it yourself, Then you can make
Well, you
them
know
a
what
bit.
colors work and what profiles. Matter
Yeah.
of fact, while you're talking about that, Matthew, let's discuss your rod setup. I get different people on the show. I got casters. You're mainly a long rod guy, correct?
Yep.
Okay, you just describe what rod you use, your heads, your weight setup, and your jigs, and let people learn, what you do.
So most of the time, I'm using a 14-foot rod. If I'm on a lake with some timber, I use a 13-foot rod though, because you're getting in tight. I mean, I'll even use still 11-foot rod. That's my favorite is an 11. But we've gotten to the point now where we're just like that's all people got in their boat is 13, 14, 16s.
Yeah, I seen it. It's getting longer and longer.
Yeah. As far as the tournament fishing aspect goes, as far as just like recreational fishing, I wouldn't have about a 13-foot rod. I mean, I used 13-foot rods up until probably 2 years ago. Whenever started really figuring out the open water crappie game. That's where those long rods come into play, depending on how spooky the fish are. But like I was on Truman Lake yesterday, and you could turn the trolling motor around and backwash them, and they'd stay there. They wouldn't leave the tree. That's not how like Darbone was. But so if you think about it, with a 16-foot rod and 14-foot of line out, you're getting out there 30 foot.
Right.
Your pitch. But
so
if you have
you're pitching it, you're pulling line and
yeah, pulling my line.
Are you a spinning rod guy? Or are you a bait caster rod on your long rod? What are you, Matthew?
I like a bait caster because if you hold it in your left hand, you want a right-handed reel. That way, whenever you turn down. That way, whenever you pull the line, I turn my hand sideways a little bit and hold it like just sideways. Whenever I pull my line, I pull it up about like you're drawing a bow.
Okay.
And when you let go of that line, it just falls and stretches out, and it stays out of the handle. But if I had a left-handed reel where the hand was on, the reel was up, I'd get it all tangled up all the time, and like that's like a major thing. I mean, just yesterday when me and my buddy were fishing, I hooked a fish and I had a jacket on, and the line got caught in one of the zippers, and I literally was like, if this was a tournament, I would literally lose that fish, and then it fell off like not much longer after I said that.
That's big information, Matthew, because people, you got to be consistent with your pitch, with your casting, your approach, everything. There's a formula, like you said. If the fish are spooky, I may have to pitch to them further, or if they're not spooky, like you said, they're Truman, you got to run up on them. But what weight do you normally use, like above your jig?
Depends on what they're doing. If they're not spooky fish, but they're finicky, I'm going to run like a quarter or a 3/16. But like what they were doing down there, I was using a 1/2 ounce, and it was because like they were just darty. They were just moving around and darting around, and I was still fishing the way I do just about everywhere. The difference was if you spooked the fish with your boat, they would bite. But if you spooked them with a bait, they didn't want nothing to do with it. A couple of them, I just switch the trolling motor back and forth and just go ahead and get them to go if they were like close to the edge where they go out into the open water. So I went through a couple places and just went straight through the middle of the little group of trees, and then I went out and fished in the open water.
So you're spooking them off the timber in the open on purpose.
Yeah, because if you go up to them on the timber, then you chase them. I mean, you can't chase them out of it. I tore up, that's why I tore up one of those rear trolling motors.
Right. Okay.
And so it's easier to just go through there, and it'd be better if there was somebody in the timber sitting there spinning around and keep them out of there. The only difference, the only problem is if they go down into the mud and you don't.
Right. Do you think I'm gonna use the word adrenaline, but when you spook them, I've noticed that too. Once I tracked them back down, they bit immediately. Like it was crazy. What do you think causes that, Matthew, in your opinion?
Well, I think they're on trees a lot of times just resting. They're not real worried about eating. And whenever they get spooked off of there, they're back out in open water. And what do they do when they're in open water? They're always eating, There
you go. That's a good analogy right there.
The only thing is there is timber on certain lakes, like especially Truman Lake. Like there's places that there's current and the fish are loading up in this area because of the current to feed. They're using the trees as like an ambush point. Bait comes blowing by and they're feeding off of them. Same thing with like Alabama River. fish on that river, you know, they're probably there's fish that are set up to feed on the big black stumps and kind of a little eddy, because
Right.
Minnows are going to get trapped in that eddy. And the fish, if they slide up and down the water column, if the minnows are up high, you know, they might slide up to eat and they just go back down and rest.
Yeah, you suggesting, Matt, like the Alabama River, a lot of river systems that have current. You're saying that bigger fish are still probably on the river before they, because I went to Alabama River and I seen a few inside the mouth, but not many. You think they're still hiding behind root balls and big stumps?
Oh yeah, but like this week, I think the 7th will be the first full moon after, you know, we've had this warming trend, so there'll be a lot of fish shoot back into the creeks and stuff. You know, I noticed on Truman, like there was fish in 6 foot of water in the back of some creeks, but you know, it's not like fully progressed. Like those are fish that probably wouldn't be there. But the thing is, the buddy that I had with me, I told him, like, you know, this one spot, this one little piece of structure had probably like 3 or 4 2-pounders on it. We caught a 213, the biggest fish spooked off of it, and we caught a 190 right before it. You know, that was probably up at a half foot of water, and then just slowly tapered off. Well, those fish are making that push, and that's that fine line where it's too shallow and it's deep enough for them to stay out here, and they're just pooled up there. And I said, for the fish to get on that piece of structure, they had to roam. So there's got to be a lot more out there roaming.
Right. You think some like it's kind of like a hunting thing, a doe and rut thing. They all don't come in at the same exact time, but you think they're just coming in waves? Is that what you're saying? Just moving up in waves like that?
Yeah. They just move up in waves. There's so many, like that creek that we were in. There's probably hundreds of thousands of fish in that area of the lake, and specifically that arm. And you know, we seen 300 crappie, you know, so there's,
man, that's
awesome. I mean, tens of thousands for sure out there that are just roaming in that open water, you know, and that's a timing thing. Like you can go through a stretch and not see any fish on that structure. And I can't tell you why they go to it, whether it's the weather or barometric pressure, but then you can roll through it in an hour, 2 hours later, and they're just all over the place. I've watched them just come up out of especially in the spring, you know, there's some lakes that I spend some time on that have big fish, like just big fish lakes. And like, it's already slow on a big fish lake, but I've been there late in the afternoon in the spring. And as the days get longer, they know what they're, you know, fixing to go do and get their thing on. And just like a light switch, it went from like see 1 or 2 fish every 30, 40 minutes to, I mean, fish absolutely everywhere.
That's crazy, man. I noticed that too. I've been over the area, Matthew, and the fish are down in the mud. I never understood that until somebody told me. And then I was like, I come back through an hour later and there's fish everywhere. Like, they just didn't come from, you know, out in the open. They may have moved up, but you're just like, man, I mean, I've caught literally 30, you know, my limit of 30 fish in just a minute, you know, doing that because they come up in different ways like that.
Well, I had a good example of it there on the Alabama River in 2021 when the ACT Classic was there. The river was coming up and it had a cut. There was a cut for the tournament, and finally the boat pressure in this one place I think was keeping them down. You know, there's 3 or 4 boats in there. I caught a 2-pounder in it practicing, and the 3rd day, I mean, the river jumped like 4 foot, and they weren't in there. Like, I mean, they had to be in there, but there were still fish that were living in that out in the main river. And the only thing I could think of, I mean, I told my buddy on that 3rd day, like, we can catch, you know, 14 pounds, I'm pretty sure. And I just had a hunch, went down there to that creek because it was the only place I caught a 2-pounder. And we pull in there and the river had came up. And I think those fish that were sitting in the main river had so much current on them that they just ran along that bank until they felt that current break and just took off in there. And when I pulled in there, I mean, it was dumb. There was 2-pounders literally everywhere.
That's what you think they do, Matthew, is like they ride that current down to the hit of eddy and they can feel that pull them into the mouth of a creek.
Yep. Some of the like biologists talk about with bass, I haven't heard it about crappie specifically, but with their lateral line, they have little hair follicles on it and those things lay over. And so that's how they know when they're in the current. You know, they'll lay back when they're facing into the current. When they're going with the current, they flip out forward, and that's how they know their directions, you know. And I mean, it has to be the same with the crappie. And the thing is with crappie is they 100% know where they're at. I mean, all the time. I don't think there's a time they don't know where they're at. I've watched them.
You're telling me that's
Go
like
ahead.
a big deer. They don't do anything by accident. Those crappie, you're saying a crappie don't either. They know where they are. So
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
what you're
They know where
telling me
they
is
are.
like, go ahead, Matthew.
Oh, I was just going to say, it's like us in our environment. You know, you turn the lights off in your house, you know, you can walk to the bathroom, you know, in the middle of the night.
Man,
And I think fish are the same way. You know, I just think they know where they are. Now, obviously, I think there's a little to it if you take a fish out of a creek that it's lived in all of its life and go throw it. But like what Patrick Stone's proved, you know, with his data is like those fish are different though. They're the like there's flatheads in there that might eat them very rarely at night. But
right.
other than that, during the day, they have nothing to do but swim, and they end up all over the place. I think, you know, each lake's a little different. I mean, there's places like the creek I was in yesterday. I mean, I fish in the summer in the back of it because it's so flat, and it has the shad to stay in there, and there's plenty of oxygen. There's plenty of room for the wind whenever it blows to cause turbulence and oxygenate the water, and they just don't leave. You know, that's probably the number one reason they leave creeks, is because the oxygen content depletes, and there's hardly any oxygen in them, and that's why they leave. And if there is any in there, they probably live really shallow, just because any bit of wind that comes through, it's not a big enough wind to really turn the water. It's just enough to chop, and they
Right.
probably live shallow. And there's just enough oxygen for them to live. And if I had to give my best guess, that's where, you know, your 3.5 pounders in like a place like Truman come from. Is they've lived half their life or almost all of it dirt shallow up in the middle of nowhere that you don't go fish, especially in the summer. And they just, out of curiosity, they might roam out, and that's the you know, 1 3.5 pounder you catch out of Truman.
That's good information, Matthew. That's something I've never even heard. All that stuff you just talked about. I mean, I've heard people go into little slight details about it, but not that specific, man. That's good stuff. So,
Matt,
like I said, I fish a lot of rivers in the summer, and I went down there to the boat races years ago in July, and I thought I had some long rods right when long rods started doing it. And I actually went in and found some fish in 8 foot of water, and it's July. It's hot as all get out. And they were in there because, as you said, the oxygen level's fine, the bait's there. So, you know, they're not doing anything by accident, like you said.
hey, Matt, I got, actually, Jessica just wrote down a question she's got for you. It's a problem. Oh, excuse me. There's somebody else that asked.
Where's it at?
Problem we've been having here in Alabama.
Oh, here it is. Yeah.
I don't know if it's reached
maybe
you yet.
everybody's having this problem. Matthew, how do you adjust your settings, Livescope, to deal with this pollen? We're dealing with it right now.
So the best thing you can do is turn your noise reject on high and back your gain down a little bit. You could turn your TVG on high too, because TVG is time varied gain. It's a signal. It's a compensation that the unit uses to decipher like the size of things. Now, when you start talking like 1.25 pound crappie to 1.5 pounds, I don't know that it makes a big difference. I don't run it on at all, but I think it's more for like giant objects, really. You know, I've not noticed like you can tell the difference within 1/4 pound or anything, but it will clear up your screen if you turn it on high. But the best solution, and Patrick Stone will probably agree, I just told Hayden Jeffries was dealing with a bunch of pollen, and I told him, like, dude, put your 34 on. The LVS 34, I don't know if it's just because it's got such a tight beam that it's not picking up on a wide amount of the particles and causing interference, as to where the LVS 32, it's shooting a little bit wider beam, and it's bringing in, you know, obviously more of the pollen, and has to go through that unit, and it's got to process it, and so it's just got that tighter beam and just not as much pollen is on. It's the only explanation I have. You know, I wish I had an electrical engineering degree or something like that.
Oh yeah, well, you're just like us. You're experimenting. I told John I turned my color limit up to 30, and it cleared mine up a lot. I'm running a 32. But while you're talking about Livescope, I know you've shared several videos. It's Matthew Rogers Angling on Facebook, guys. You need to follow him. He posts a lot of stuff on there. I watched a bunch of it here this week. Go over your Livescope settings while we're talking about Livescopes.
So my settings are like the other day, I turned every single thing off. Like at Grenada when I was there for the ACT, just to be able to see, because I wasn't worried about getting rid of the small fish off the screen and only looking for the big fish. I was wanting to see any and everything, and I was just looking through the clutter. Like with that pollen, a big thing of it is like it's like you got to train your eyes like during the time that you're looking at it to just look for the fish. It
Right.
hurts and it's like sucks, but like there's nothing you can really do about it.
No.
But like I was trying to see pound fish, any fish that was in there,
Right.
and so I had turned all my I never run color limit on mine, but I had my TVG off, noise reject off. I bumped my gain up a little bit more, and I was just looking through the clutter because any fish that was the problem at Grenada sometimes is like if you have settings backed off to where you're not running it hot, those fish get up so shallow. Even like 3-pounders I've seen where they're just like a flicker, just a barely a little flicker.
That's crazy.
And so, I'm trying to see any of that. I mean, I was every once in a while. I mean, there was some shad balls that were so tight that I'd flip over. As soon as my jig would hit, they'd kind of disperse, and I'd see that it's not. But
I seen them get together like that too, and I thought, oh, there's fish. About the time I pitch, I see them. I said, oh man, that was just some gizzard shad together or something like that.
A big thing with like Livescope though, like there's no perfect settings. They're imperfect. I mean, it's just what you get used to, like the colors. I mean, I think that you go through the colors and you play with them and you find something you like. I like orange crawfish. I think that in structure, you can see the difference way better. And to be able to see the difference better, what you guys, you can do is, and I'm trying to think of what color it is, but you can take orange crawfish, look at fish on a tree, and then change it to what the original Panoptics was. It's like the red or blue. No, the red blue, like the very first Panoptics, that first version of it. And you'll see that color makes a difference. You'll see that red and blue, it just merges everything together, and it's hard to tell. It's hard to decipher what's what. So colors can help, and you just got to kind of find one you like.
So you're running the orange crawfish on yours. I seen that on your videos on Matthew, your page, Matthew Rogers Angling.
Mm-hmm.
Go over some of your sponsors now while we got 80 something people on here, because that's who backs you, and you need to go over some of them, man, because that's what this show's about too.
Yeah, man. Garmin is a really big part of me, and I'm honored to be on that team. That's pretty cool. I looked up to I wanted that really bad, and whenever I got it, that was a super rewarding feeling.
That's a big one.
And of course, Jinko fishing, and then I'm getting my new boat. Picking up my Bass Cat probably after I get back from Grenada.
Awesome.
And I'm getting that through Boatworks, and they have an awesome little tackle shop named or it's called Baitworks there.
I've seen that you're sponsored by Baitworks. I've seen they actually, I don't know if they're based out of Tuscaloosa here in Alabama or not. I think there's a Boatworks down here in Alabama.
Yeah. They just got a dealership there.
Yeah.
And then,
I've talked to some of those guys. They're super cool guys too, man.
And then of course, I just got on with Norfin gear, and man,
right.
I got on with them, and I've been wearing the stuff before I got and said, oh, this is the best stuff ever, because,
right.
I got a really good, I got a discount on it. I didn't, I'm not getting a free one. And it's like, it's super comfortable stuff. Like I'd have it on now as just a casual jacket, but I wanted something a little insulated, and their cold weather gear is like too insulated for this weather,
Right. Yeah. I've heard Eric say you don't want to put that heavy stuff on unless it's below 30 or.
No. Yeah. So. Yeah. It's just super insulated, and I don't like feeling puffy like that, but,
right.
As far as a downpour, I haven't worn a complete downpour yet. But I've never had any good rain gear that in a complete downpour that you don't get a little wet.
Yeah, get a bit on your elbows. Y'all come on with some questions. While we got Matthew on here, I know y'all got some questions. Y'all need to pick this man's brain. I got a bunch of questions I asked him myself. So you and your dad won at Lake Darbone. That was what, 2 weeks ago?
Yep, last weekend I think. Yeah,
well,
I can't keep up with it. Was last weekend? Okay, then. Oh, the Grenada one, you come in third. That was the ACT format where you kept as many keepers.
Yeah, I don't want to talk about that. I don't want to talk about that butt kicking I took. I'm telling you that Hayden is a freaking machine when it comes to catching numbers. I mean, they just had to change the format because he was dominating.
Yeah, he won by 200 pounds. I mean, what do you do? I mean,
yeah. I really don't know that my shoulder would even hold up to that. Like, that's dumb. I don't want to catch that many fish.
No, I understand. So you like the format of the 7. And what format did they just go to? A big fish format? What was?
Yeah, and
Explain some of that, Matthew.
I just had a buddy tell me a little brief about it. It's going to be basically like the Big Fish Challenge, which that's actually what got me started in tournament crappie fishing. That was the first thing I fished, and I've been looking forward to them adding like just a special tournament here and there. I didn't think that they would do a complete format change, but it'll be fun. I'll probably fish if it comes close to the house. I'll fish one. I think there's one on Grand, but I probably wouldn't drive all the way to Grand Lake for that format. I would have went down there for the other one, just because you might be able to get some brush tops where 2 guys could pitch into them, and if you got your boat marshal there, something like that would work. 2 guys couldn't do it on Grenada. It's just that's an individual deal there. But there's some lakes like Lake of the Ozarks. If they were under docks, 2 guys could shoot docks. So there's some logic. There's a rational side to that format, of course. But I prefer to like hunt down 7 fish, like to get in the brain of a big crappie, and at work. Obviously that's the most important thing to me. Like that's the most gratifying thing is whenever you can put a bigger 7 fish stringer together than the next guy.
Oh yeah, that's what it's about. What do you run your depth on most of the time, Matthew, as far as your live scope looking for big fish?
So most of these lakes we go to have dingier water, so we're up shallow. 20 feet's typically the deepest I go. But let's say Alabama River, for example, I'm fishing in a creek, and I got it set to about 20 foot because I'm like, there's no way there's big crappie down deeper than that. And it's just my mindset. This is that fine line between somebody that, it hits one tournament a year and they get a top 5, and the guy that stays in the top 5, and I mean, this is the things that you have to work on. I kept mine at 20 foot, didn't see nothing. Kyler Beckman came in right behind me and caught him 24 foot down, like on the bottom, 4 foot deeper, and I'm literally just right over the top of them.
That's crazy.
So, keeping an open mind, and I mean that's kind of my theory with the fish in general, and in like a creek is, if you go start at the back of it and they're not there, and you hit the middle of it and you've hit east and west, well, and you've coming from the south, well, then they have to be further north, and they got to be out towards the mouth if that's the case, if that's how it sets up. So I mean, like breaking down a creek, and that's the thing I was talking to a buddy about Truman today. Truman fishes different.
Right.
Everything is just gut driven. And I see it.
They're starting to break up, Matthew.
Finicky fish. So finicky fish yesterday.
There you go.
They weren't very aggressive, and I have some.
I think it's storming where Matthew is. That's why his signal's busting up.
Yeah, it is. There's some long stuff, but okay. I'll stop what I was saying.
Yeah, we might lose him. We have to bring him back. Yeah, Jamie Beasley is asking John, while we're waiting on Matthew to come back, any tips for them finicky fish? Tell Jamie what you think. That's what Matthew was trying to answer, I think.
When he says finicky, I guess he got a reaction and they didn't do right on the first time they reacted to the bait.
That's probably what he's saying.
A lot of people will say color change. Me personally, if I could put something smaller, maybe stall it out, slow it down any way I can on the fish. If I'm close enough where I can, hold it on him and just hold him. A lot of times, if you can get that reaction again and he ever turns up, sometimes it might be 20, 25 seconds before that fish will ever come up and eat that bait. But if he's still engaged with it, just hold it there. A lot of times you jerking and jigging a bait is what messes the whole, thing up. If that doesn't work, if you got a minnow in there, as a last resort, put that minnow on there.
That's what Michael Sands is asking. He was asking Matthew. We're waiting on Matthew to come back. he's asking, do you have minutes for backup? And John,
Yeah.
you always have minutes for backup. Like
Well,
you said.
I got a friend of mine. He's a private boat captain in the Gulf, and whenever we go with him, he's always like, we're gonna start using this artificial bait. He said, but once you go to live baiting, he's really no going back. You got.
There he is. He's back.
This internet, it's actually been giving us tons of problems. I'm just like,
hey man, that's everywhere. But somebody was asking you, do you use minutes for backup there, Matthew?
Oh, 100%. If they are allowed, you better have them. I mean, and I mean, I'd almost say 9 times out of 10, I have a plan to not use them, but they're in the boat in case. I just start putting them on. I mean, until, you fish a format without them, I mean, there's just no sense in not having them. They're just a pain in the butt to take care of, especially this time of year. Your hands are cold, and then it's just no fun. Minnows.
Oh, yeah.
Minnows.
You're right. Let's see. Somebody's asking a question right here. Keith Kirkham's asking, what's your favorite setup to catch them when they run the bank? It will happen soon in Central Alabama. What do you use when they run the bank, Matthew?
Well, honestly, typically now with Livescope, there's always fish out there like in the deeper water. So those are what like I concentrate on. But like growing up, and I mean until I was 21 years old, 21 years old, something like that. I mean I had pretty much the low end 7-inch graph, so I didn't use a lot of it. I fished a ton of corks, and if like they were most of the time I was looking for brush though, shallow brush, and you could go jig it. That was the easiest thing in the spring because they already love the structure, and the structure just gives them protection, and they know that. And usually they'll make beds right there close. And I think that even fish that aren't spawning will hang out right there, especially whenever the females that go on the bed. If their structure really close, the males will just get on it and stay on it until the females move back off the bed, and they're right there to fertilize the eggs and then guard the nest. But
right.
you can catch males from like right about right now down there. There's probably males up there already.
Oh yeah, I caught some in the grass earlier. This is a great question right here. This guy in pre-fishing for open water, how do you go about deciding what area to search first? I guess it depends on time of year. Right now, let's just discuss right now. How would you go to a new body of water, Matthew, or look on your map? So how would you approach it?
Well, like most places, the fish are just now leaving the deeper water and heading into the bays and shallow, pockets, like spawning pockets and stuff. So like the easiest thing is probably just going creek channel edges. Follow a main river creek channel into a creek. Like Grenada, there's at certain water levels, it's real easy because there's only like a few places for the concentrations to be. Of course, I hit earlier on some of the big fish go live off by themselves, but the concentrations of fish, that the recreational guys going out after to catch numbers, right. They're in the most likely place is what I'd say it or call it. But like back with the shallow thing, there's places where there's fish shallow, like the river by my house all the time. I mean, all winter you can catch them with a cork. They just live on shallow laydowns and stuff like that. And, with a cork, I always use a 32nd ounce jig just because it's light and doesn't pull the cork under. But very rarely I use a slip cork for anything, Back when I was first fishing, I'd use slip corks on
right.
Stockton Lake, a clear lake by my house. I'd throw them out and throw a buoy marker out and let the brush pile sit for 5 minutes and then come back up and ease up to it and no electronics on and cast it with a slip cork.
Right. Everybody search water like that too. Hey, you find a pot of them, like you said, the males or whatever, they're nesting. And what's your favorite color jig to use around your house there, Matthew, or just in general? What are you tying on the night before a tournament?
Most of the time, I'd say like 90% of the time, a blue and chartreuse, something kind of in that shade. Gotcha. And then like I'll have a gray on gray, something real natural.
Got you.
But like a blue and chartreuse, and I still think I don't think that the fish can see the color itself. I think they see the shades of the colors, the outline. Right. So in sunnier weather, I think that like a white and chartreuse, they can profile it fine. And then when it gets dark and cloudy out, they have a harder time profiling that. So like a black and chartreuse works better.
Oh, there you go. That's great information, guys. He's giving away stuff. This man fishes for a living. So He's giving you tips. You need to write it down for sure.
But
That's
like,
awesome.
you know, a lot of the creeks around the house, whenever I was like 16 and driving to, you know, I just had a 10 or 11 foot pole. Didn't know any different. But just, I mean, walk the 45-degree bank, fall over 4 or 5 times, slip in the water, you know, it come over the boots. But just jigging, I mean, the shallowest structure that you can see, that you can get to. I mean, that's probably my favorite way to catch fish is thinking back, you know, all the times that, you know, how rewarding it was to catch 7 or 8 of them just to be able to have a meal.
Oh, yeah, I know. I'd fire up for 10. I was like, oh, I've
Yeah.
caught a dozen. You know, now you're just like, I didn't catch for 15. You know, we're all getting spoiled for sure.
Yeah.
Let's see. This is a great question right here, Matthew. He said if fish are piled up on structure in semi-clear water, you get a lot of rain. We deal with this in Alabama a lot. Get a lot of rain overnight. The water goes, you know, from clear to muddy. The fish disappear. Where do they go? Where, in your opinion, do they go?
More than likely, I think they go shallow, especially like this time of year. If it's a warm rain, I think they're going to move up into that water that's coming into the lake that's warm, and more likely it's washing bugs. And then like most of the bait goes shallow too when that happens. And like same thing with ducks, same thing with fish. You know, they chase that fresh water line. As that water moves up, they just jump up with it, and they just keep jumping up with it. It gets harder to catch them because there's so much brush in the water.
Right.
But, you know, the best time is like probably when that stuff starts falling out. And if they're comfortable up in 6 foot of water and the water drops, you know, 3 or 4 foot and that brush line is about right in there where they have to pull out. I mean, that's probably some of the best fishing you can catch, you know, especially if you got shallow water. Like when something like that happens, to be a step ahead, that's when you go sink a brush pile in the back of a creek that you know that the fish have been spawning in, that you've caught them all spring. And they start drawing the water down, and you literally put a gas station there for them to stop at, you know? I mean,
you're right. You're right. Exactly right. You're secondary cover, like you said. If the water's falling, they may move to the next secondary cover from where they were. It may be similar. Like I've seen stuff hang on a stump big as your forearm. You're like 10 or 12 fish. So, it's different. Let's see. Somebody's asking a question, John, about his monkey milk, because he's a monkey milk guy. There's you, John. I know you was itching to get this, and this is a question for John. You've spoken about the color of monkey milk jigs while shopping. He said while he was shopping at Bass Pro, found a large variety. Specifically, what jig do you use?
So I use I use so many different things. Like I'm not exclusive necessarily with like the Jinko baits. I mean, I promote them, but I told them like I use a lot of different stuff. I mean, there's hundreds of different things in my boat. Now I think I can catch almost 90% of the fish that I go after with what I have Jinko wise, but like besides like tiny hair jigs, and that's what I was gonna say about finicky fish earlier, and I can't remember who asked that.
Yeah, let me go back to that question because you cut out right then. John went over his opinion on it. Well, let me see where it was.
But on the monkey milk, I have quite a bit of spike it markers. Like you can go get a pack of spike it markers pretty cheap, and you can turn monkey milk into about anything, you know. And it's a neutral color for that, and you can doctor it up with something. You can make it a shade of blue or change, and it's just a confidence thing more than likely most of the time for me. But like I had a color I swore by at Darbone, and I had confidence in it, and it helped me. I mean, I think it helped me win. But so I tie some jigs on, and you can get this is juicy stuff. I don't really want to say it, but
it doesn't matter. Spit it out. You don't went to it, Matthew.
I go to Waspy fly tying tackle, and they have a little tiny trout jig, and I couldn't tell you the exact name of it. Like, it's just like a little Waspy, ball head, no collar on it, and it's a steelhead hook. It's like a trout steelhead hook, and you can get them in like 1/124th. You can get them in like all kinds of sizes. Probably 1/64th is my favorite. With has like a number 4 hook.
You better be writing this down, folks.
Yeah, the number 6 hooks and 8 hooks are like almost too small. Now I'm not saying they don't work, but basically what I'm trying to get is a long enough shank that I can still tie a bait on that they can see the profile. It's just enough weight that it kind of stays separate from the weight, so it don't get tangled up and wrap up. And I use 15-pound fluorocarbon, sometimes 12. but mainly 15. And you can splice it on, or you can just run straight fluorocarbon. I mean, it doesn't really make a huge difference. I do think that sometimes the braid they can feel come through the water, but I just bob or stop, like I was saying, a weight above it to be able to get it down to them. And the biggest trick to it with those little tiny baits is, if you, like the other day, I was getting short struck. I was trying the number 8 hooks. I've always just used the number like 2s and 4s.
Right.
I've gone down to a 6, but a 6 for black crappie works. But it's just that's getting pretty small, as far as having a safe hook in them. I bring the fish up to the bait, and as I bring it away from them with that 15-pound fluoro, it stays stiff enough. If you just lower your tip, I mean a quarter, half inch, just barely relieve the pressure on it, it makes that bait float up and just sit there. Whenever they bite it, they get the hook in their mouth by accident. They're just biting it with they're inspecting it because they don't have hands. They can't reach up there and feel it. And
Yeah, that's what we always said. Some of them just go up there and hit it with their mouth closed, and that hook will sting them, like you said.
Yeah. If you have a 16th on there, that's going to be just a little too much weight. I mean, you can get by with a 32nd if the 32nd has a small hook, but like there's a perfect size hook, and I think that is that number 2 to 4, a 6 sometimes a 6 if you got a pretty small bait. You don't want to have a number 6 hook with a 1.5 inch long or a 2-inch bait. We're talking, I got them in my boat, but I mean, here's a 1/32 with I think like a number 6. It's not the hook that I want. It's got a sickle, but that's all I could find at the time whenever I got them, and I use them, on black crappie most of the time.
Right.
Most of the black crappie yesterday were, I mean, they were a foot down, 2 foot down on leaning logs, tops of stumps. You could tell. You get in a hedge tree, and you could tell which ones were the black crappie, and they just, I mean, they'll hit. They're aggressive. They'll hit bigger stuff, but you're way better off having something little, now that we can put it right on their nose. The old style stuff using big baits had a lot to do with trying to get them to see it. When you go to Grenada, use a big bait. Well,
right.
There's big shad in there, and of course there's big crappie, but they probably can't see a little inch and a half shad very good there. But when a 3 or 4 inch shad comes over them, they can feel it on top of that. I think that Rick Clunn talks about in the YouTube video you can go watch. You just type in Rick Clunn hydrodynamic imagery, and he talks about like spinnerbaiting and how the fish feel the different blades that come through, and they decide just by the vibration. This is what he believes. It's not necessarily factual. Nobody will ever know exactly what the fish do or why they do it, but it pertains to what they feel coming through the water, that vibration, and how big it is, how big that thump is off of the blade, whether they determine it's worth, using all their energy to go chase down in 45-degree water. I think crappie obviously have that same instinct, not as heightened as what a bass does, because bass are, they're optimistic feeders. They like just attack everything.
Oh yeah, you're right. But like up until Livescope, people didn't realize, you threw up to a brush pile stump, and you caught that fish halfway the boat. You thought they were on something between you and the boat, and they come off of that log and followed your bait. But you're mainly saying the fish that don't want to, really be aggressive towards your bait. You're setting that bait on them, and if they're not reacting, you're putting it a little closer. If you take it away from them, you're pitching back on there. So that's what you're adjusting your pitch to them. How the fish reacts, right?
Yeah. I mean, presentation's everything with them. If you present it wrong the first time, like I was saying earlier, if you got the bait on those fish and then kick them off of a stump or whatever with the boat, or just hope they spook off, like they would just, they'd look at a live minnow sitting in front of them and not care a whole lot about it.
I've seen that, yeah.
But the thing is, what I think changed it, like let's say at Darbone, was the water temperature had cooled off and it had warmed up, and there was a big warming trend. It warmed up to 60 degrees, and then it fell off from a cold front coming through. And I felt like those fish would shoot out and look sometimes at the little 16th, 32nd ounce hair jig. And they would like just decide like they've seen it before. That's a jig, and that's too small for me to care that much about. But it came by just close enough. They wondered what it was. And then I started tipping it with a minnow, and I think that longer profile caused a reaction in them. There's only a few ways to cause a reaction in a crappie. You know, you could try to throw jerk baits, stuff like that, but it's not efficient. You're not going to get it down there quick enough. They'd have to be on a brush pile. The only way, you know, we have casting and we have dipping. And, you know, I think that you just have to figure out during that day, like what they want, you know, and the next day they might not want that, you know, they might just want it held on their nose and just held there, and they look at it, and a lot of people might pull it away after 30, 40 seconds. And that fish might need a minute to look at it. I mean, I've caught them doing that, especially at like Grenada. I've had them just sit there and stare at it for probably, you know, a minute, and all of a sudden just out of nowhere, they just smoke it, you know.
I see those fish videos, Patrick Stone and Eric, and them put them out, and they're following that fish with their arm out, you know, and then that fish just nose up, boink. You're like, I've been following it. They don't, you know, they'll tell you, I've been following this fish for, you know, 15 minutes. You're like, man,
yeah,
you know, that's crazy.
And of course, like, we are fishing for fish that we would have never fished for before. You know,
Correct.
you basically, spider rigging back in the day, you developed a pattern. Like, most of the time it was a crank or two off the bottom. Now, if you see a fish on the bottom, a lot of times they don't eat. And, you know, the only logical thing in my mind is because they're so deep, it's dark, especially on like Grenada. You know, if they're 6 foot down or deeper, it's hard to get them to bite because the water's so dark. You know, they probably can't.
Right.
They're down there being lethargic, you know, in my opinion, and just not wanting to feed. But back in the day, you know, you'd spider rig and you go down to the bottom and crank it up just a little bit.
That's
but
right.
You develop, you know, where you finally got hit. If you had 2 rods that were shallow, then you'd move everything up shallow, and you're like just targeting those fish. And now we're targeting, you know, every fish we see, no matter what depth it is. So of course we're gonna have a lot of fish that don't eat. I think a big thing is that, like, a lot of people get caught up, you know, saying that they're not eating, and we got to know that, like, we're fishing for fish that are inactive. I mean, we're pitching at every single fish, and so there's just a small percentage of the fish that, you know, are going to eat in certain situations, like Darbone. You know, I'd say like maybe 30% of the fish that I seen ate. Stayed there long enough to let you get a bait close to them, or didn't spook totally out of sight where you could get them chased back down. I mean, it was just being, you know, laser focused for 8 hours. Like, if it was just going out there fun fishing like that, I mean, I would have been tying hair jigs, you know. I mean, it was
right.
It's work when it's like that. Same thing at Grenada, when you have to chase one down for 30 minutes to finally get him to see it. I mean, that is work. But obviously, there's a
especially
reward.
holding your arm out, like you're saying. You're holding that 16, 15 foot rod out there with a weight on it, and you got your arm out trying to find the, you know. Somebody's asking what bait cast reel you use, Matthew.
You know, it really doesn't make a difference when it comes to the crappie. Something cheap for the most part. I don't have any affiliates with any real companies. I really like Daiwas whenever I like bass fish and stuff like that. Daiwa spinning reels are really nice. I really like them. But as far as like what I use, I got Lew's. I got them all just cheap. About $30-$40 all you need to spend on one for, you know, crappie. If it has,
you just use it to hold the line, and you know, because the rod's doing the work, like you said. You're swinging the fish in, stuff like that. Y'all better come on with some questions. This hour flies by when you're getting this much information from somebody like Matthew. This is awesome, man. It's been a good show. I'm trying to see if we got any more questions. Where's your next tournament at, Matthew?
Grenada. Yeah, Grenada. Yeah. No. And then after that, in a few weeks, is Eufaula, Oklahoma for the Elite Series. Right. That's going to be a good one, you know, because like there hasn't been a tournament there for a long time, and it's a huge lake, and there's, you know, it can be one north, south, east, or west, and that's
a big lake, isn't it?
Yeah, it's like maybe 177,000 acres or something like that. I haven't looked at many maps yet of it. I need to get looking at the maps. That'll be the one that like shows who put the work in, trying to figure out what creek's better and why it's better. Google Earth, trying to find muddier water. You know, there's clear water on Eufaula, but there's definitely, you know, obviously muddy water, and the muddy waters where the biggest crappie live in about every lake there is. Besides,
there you go, right there. There's some top secret information. Everybody. It's so funny. These old heads that I fish with, they're like, "This water's too muddy. I'm not fishing here." And I'm like, I'm kind of laughing. I'm like, you realize what's in this water? I mean, but here somebody's asking you, Brad Block is asking, what did you see pre-fishing at Narbonne to what you caught during the tournament?
Well, everybody always gives me a hard time because, like, I tell them legitimately what I see, and it was like 12 and a half, 13 pounds tops, but 13 pounds on your scale versus on a calibrated tournament scale is going to be different.
Right.
So, like, I calculate that in, I figured if I got really lucky, I'd come across, maybe 13 pounds on my scale, have 14, but I did. I had 13 pounds on my scale, basically, but I had several kickers. Day 2, I had I had 1532 on my scale, and I had 255, 227, 229, 211, 191, 196, and I can't remember if I had maybe a 220. So,
what'd you have? 30 pounds, Matthew, both days? 30 or what was it?
31, I think.
31.
Something.
I knew it was strong. I remember seeing that. That's big.
But awesome. Like I had a year in 2020, I won it, and I think I had like 1680 something like that. Like had a big stringer then, and I was on my way to it. I mean, I just at 1:30 I caught the 255 that took me to the 1532, and I mean I was like wore out. I mean I was just all day. It's just anxiety, stress going through your mind. Like what do I need to do next? I just wear myself out, and then. When I caught that one, it was just like a huge thing of relief. Like I was like, I got a shot. I got a decent shot at it. I didn't think I won. I just thought I got a legitimate shot at this if Chris Fields, stumbled any. And I seen him run around a little bit, and I knew I thought I could tell he stumbled. But it's so hard to come across those kicker fish. And on top of that, getting them to eat, I lost it was like 261 on my scale or something and 277 on the tournament scale. But I seen it let me slip right up on it. Just stayed there. I was hitting stumps. For some reason, it stayed there. I flipped out and it bit, and I was bringing it up and it came off. And then I got a minnow. My dad handed me a minnow and I flipped it out there and I caught it. I mean, that's luck, but you have to have a little bit of luck. I mean, every time. I mean, I can think of every tournament I've won, and like there's something that I can think about that was lucky, but putting yourself in the position to get lucky and just hoping for it is different, and I believe that. But like most lakes, you just, you kind of know what's going to win it probably, that lake, I knew that 14 and a half to 15 pounds a day would win. I didn't think that 16 pounds was going to, be there. And, ended up, once I had that second place spot, it just put my mind in a little different place where I wasn't on idle, and I was gonna, try really hard and focus. But do you prefer using a long pole?
Yeah, you can see those questions. Yeah, this guy Taylor Bryant's want to know if the fish are hot, if their fish are biting. What? I knew you probably gonna say long pole, but go into detail about that.
It depends on what the water temperature is. So like right now on Truman Lake, the water temperature is 48. Those fish weren't gonna, they shot out and inspect something, but as long as it kept swimming away from them, I think they would have just followed it and followed it and followed it. They had to get close to it, and they would sit there and stare at it for a little bit before they'd eat. Yeah, and they're shallow, so you could literally cork them if you can see them. These black crappie that are real shallow in the water column.
Right.
But like once that water temperature hits like 64, 65, yeah, I'd be casting to them for sure. But
hey, Matthew, I've enjoyed everybody picking at you about congratulations, Bruce.
Oh, yeah, go into that. I seen that with her.
Yeah.
Bruce feeds this machine. His daddy feeds this machine. He's handing you rods and stuff, but I seen that on Facebook. They cut Matthew out of the picture, guy. If you ain't seen it, you go to Matthew Rogers Angling, you'll see it. And they cut Matthew out of the picture, and Bruce is standing there holding the trophy.
Yeah, that's the fun thing about the tournament fishing. All there's of course animosity out on the water. We're all trying to kick each other's butts, but
that's right.
Whenever it comes down to it, everybody's pretty good guys, and they all like to mess around, and it's there's no like hard feelings about stuff with it. Most everybody knows that everybody's joking. I've got a couple people like. I don't have Josh Jones fans. He's got like people, like thousands of people that'll come and back him up. I got like 2 or 3, I see them get on there. And they're like, what are you doing that for? He's a good fisherman. Leave him alone.
Oh yeah.
But-
Well, some people, Josh kind of lets the information, but like you're a good guy, man. We have good guys on this show. Like I said, I appreciate you coming on here, man, because these people that watch this show are the people that's going to back you and get information from you. So you sharing all this stuff's big time, man.
Well,
Big
I mean,
time.
feel free to message me. I mean, this is literally my job. If you have a Garmin question, that's fine. You can hit me up. I mean, there's some things that really get in there technologically advanced past me that I don't understand, but there's a lot of stuff that I do understand. And, as far as like just readjusting things, like rule number one, if you mess it up too bad, there's always restore defaults.
Hey,
I
man,
just went
I've
through
had
that
to do
with
that
a
several
buddy
times.
today.
We'll take the last question here and we'll get off of this baby and let you get back to working on your trolling motor. Gene wants to know, how long do you pre-fish an area before you move to another?
So like that's gut driven, like I was saying, like pretty much tournament fishing or fishing in general is gut driven. If I when I got down there, I had one day, and so I went and looked at the high concentration areas, and whenever I found that they were in, let's say 13 to 18 foot water, then I ran around and I just checked that 13 to 18 foot water. I knew that if I needed to, during a lull of the day where the active fish in the deeper water, went dormant and they just weren't feeding, I could run through some shallow water and stumble across something. That lull of the day, what you do with the lull of your day, whenever they quit biting as good, it's just like, seems like you need to get out of there. What you do with that is how you win tournaments. And, most of the time you just have to adjust. As soon as you get that feeling, 10 minutes after that feeling, you better have made your move. And if you hadn't, you're going to probably be in trouble.
Right. I appreciate that. We're going to tighten this thing up, guys. That's Matthew Rogers Angling on Facebook. He's sponsored by Garmin, Genco, F3 Media, Norfin USA, Bait Works, and Boat Works.
Yep.
Thank you, Matthew.
No, thank you. I appreciate the opportunity.
You stay on here, Matthew, when I end this broadcast, man. I appreciate it. Everybody for watching. Thanks for coming on CrappieKast Live. Tune in next week, 7 p.m. Thank y'all.